Day. They're still drilling in the building. So periodically, if it sounds like they're still trying to find the bank vault, it's okay. It's okay. They're not trying to find a bank vault. I don't know what it is they're trying to find, but they're working hard at it. So here we are. We're back, and I have a really kind of fun, cool thing to talk about today. So before we start, I'm going to have a quick sip of coffee. Oh, I have to also do this. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Hang on. Now I've written the thing. All right, quick sip. Okay. There, I think, might be some new people joining us, in which case, welcome and thank you for thinking of it and getting it done. The purpose of these videos for the new people is to give everyone an opportunity to kind of peek behind the curtain, behind the scenes, to get a sense of where I'm going with this exciting new project that I have. And I started this project, I call it Pivotry in Motion. And basically it is how to change your way of thinking about the things you think you can't do and want to do and aren't really sure how to make that shift. So it started just before COVID. It became something I really delved into during COVID because I was watching people having a really hard time coping. And I'm a military kid. So coping is kind of a thing that you're spoon-fed because you have to keep moving and starting over and reinventing everything about every 15 minutes. And I realized that a lot of people don't get that early training. And if they don't get the training, and nobody who's teaching them how to, get food onto a fork and into their mouths, if they don't get the training either, then there's this real gap in understanding how capable we are of coping. So I thought, well, you know what? I've been doing it my whole life, and it's what I use when I teach actors, and it's what I use when I midwife authors, when I mentor them and get them deciding what it is they really want their books to be about, or their brand to be about. I give them these coping tools and these resetting tools so that they feel confident in themselves. They feel that if they don't got this right now, they're going to got it in a minute. And that can change so much, right? So in doing these videos, they're kind of the underpinnings of all the things that I'm putting into the collection of books and the work tools, the worksheets and so on that you get to use. And then hopefully your interest and this little community, this tribe that we're building, is going to make the audiences bigger when I'm doing Zoom or when I'm doing training events or live shows. The idea is to seed the ground and to see what happens. Because if you're struggling, you deserve to understand that struggling is normal when nobody gave you the instructions that come with the how to put this together. If it's just an IKEA thing with that pointy, Allen key, and no actual how to. Pivotry is how to. So today, this is episode 262, and the subject today is, do you kvetch and carry, or do you laugh and let go? And as I wrote that title, I realized that I was breaking my own cardinal rule about always having a door number 3. And so the door number 3 for this is, do you make a note not to do it again before you do A or B? There's no reason to say, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. There's every reason to say, I failed, therefore I've learned a lesson. And now let's move forward. And that's what door number 3 is about. So in having this conversation, do you kvetch and carry or laugh and let go? I have an example before I delve into what I mean by this 2 separate ideas. Back in, I guess it was about mid 80s, 85 or 86, I was privy to some information before the public knew that You Can't Do That on Television was not going to go on for much longer. And if it did, it would be a really short reboost. So I'd been involved in this show from pretty much almost its beginning, 1 year in, and it had exploded, which was great in many ways. However, what it did on a slightly negative side was that it overshadowed anything else that I had been doing long before. Because I got into show business um, in the late 70s. And so by the time I was on You Can't Live on Television, I'd done several stage shows that had been very popularly received. And I'd had another full-time television series that did very well, won awards, and then got canceled thanks to a strike. So I was already well in my stride. I was doing a lot of cartoon work. I was doing a lot of film narration work. And so this show that came along was like a rogue wave. It completely obliterated everything else. And I realized that it was also going to be a struggle for me to remind people that I had a prehistory before that show, and that I was continuing. So what I did, because there was a theater festival every summer in the Ottawa area, is I wrote a stage show, and I called it Gloves Off. And the reason I called it Gloves Off was because it was not going to be me much longer as mom. It was just going to be Abby. And so the idea of taking the gloves off would reveal Abby once again. The other thing was that every one of the pieces in the show had a sort of a punch in them, and that's the other definition of taking the gloves off. And fortunately, the critics really enjoyed the content. The audiences really enjoyed the content. So I had a very small success, but it was a very small success compared to 53 countries around the world for You Can't Live on Television. What it did for me, though, no matter how much smaller it was it gave me an understanding that no matter what happened to one production that I was a part of, it didn't mean that my career was over when that show ended. It reminded me that there was more than one way for me to be who I am. All I had to do was make the decision to own it. Was it going to be a struggle? Absolutely. They all are from the beginning. What I needed to do was prove to myself that I had the ability, that I had the material, that I had the ability, and that the audiences recognized both of those things. Not the global audiences, certainly, but my immediate audiences. And once I had that, once I understood, okay, I have the seed. I know that I can plant and start again. Then I went back when the show was on, and we continued to do, and we had a break for a year, and then we continued to do the show. And it eventually didn't end until 1990. So I had a good 4 years more before the thing came to an end. What it gave me was a lot of confidence that no matter what, I would find a path. I would find a way to get from here to wherever it was that I wanted to be. And the reason Pivotry has emerged out of all of that is because this is what I was seeing just before COVID. This is what I was recognizing. And then during COVID, what I was seeing was that people didn't seem to have the confidence to own their new normal. They didn't seem to have the ability to recognize how versatile they are and always had been. They seem to be floundering like a little boat without a rudder. And I thought then, as I had said just a couple of minutes ago, I know how to get them from there to here. And one of the ways to do that is to make this idea of Pivotry feel familiar. So many times we resist change because change feels like going someplace strange. And familiar always feels safe, even though it's not safe anymore. It's not good for us anymore. It's not helping us anymore. Once we realize that we got it, that we're okay, well, all we need then is the instructions and somebody saying, yeah, lean this way. And that's what this is all about. So there's your backstory. What I want to say today is the idea of kvetch and carry came up randomly when I was doing one of the earlier videos. It just sort of popped into my head and I said it and I laughed and then I wrote it down. And I want to talk about that because it's easy to complain. It's easy to kvetch and moan and say, poor me, and how unfair, and how come they get to do this, and who said those people could come. It's easy to do that. What we don't realize when we're doing it is that we're giving our power away. We don't see in this rising tide of incidents that people are calling Karen and Kevin moments. No negatives thrust upon all the lovely people who are named Karen or Kevin, but the person who complains loud and long, the person who steps out of their zone to try and tell someone else what to do, that doesn't feel like powerless. That feels like control. That feels like I'm not going to stand for that. I'm going to talk to the manager. I'm going to this and I'm going to that. You can't so and so. It feels like power. It feels like control. It feels like dominance. It feels like we are table number one and we are right. The actual fact is, it is not control. It is giving away control. It is a complete rejection and abandonment of our control of us. And I know it doesn't seem like it, and I'm going to explain why. And it's all predicated on the idea that you cannot be in two places at once. And here's how it works. I have my square footage, my place, my area that I garden, that I clean, that I inhabit, that I drive. I have this, it's mine. I've earned it. Some of it may have been given to me, and I am maintaining it. And as long as I maintain it, it is mine. We all agree that that is basically what life is all about. I get to have pretty clean clothes to wear if I take care of my clothes. If I purchase things that I think are pretty and I look after them, then I get to have them as I wish them. As long as I maintain it, it's mine. Okay. The minute I abandon that, the minute I set that aside, the minute I say, I'll come back, and I focus on something else over here, who's looking after my stuff? Who's taking care of my things? Who is maintaining my garden? Who is pulling the weeds and looking after things? Who is making sure that dinner is in a different set of places that I can put together easily so I enjoy a delicious meal? Who is taking care of all of that if I am over here? And the answer is no one. No one. When we give away our focus, when we pull it from the thing that is ours to own, we pull it away and we place it here, no one is in charge. We have let it go. We are not in control. We have left the building. Now, I know this very personally, and I know this with great authority because I was raised by two people who had mental health issues, and they very often left the building, and mostly without any warning. Fortunately, never both at the same time. I used to say as a result. When people would say that they were raised by wolves, I would say I was raised by Cheshire cats. They were there, and then all of a sudden they weren't. And the only thing left was the smile, because they were off somewhere battling their own demons. So who raised me? Me. Me and my inner child. And maybe a few Viking gods here and there. Viking guardian angels. So when we let go, when we say, it'll be fine, because I'm doing this, because I've decided it's my job to make sure that, we are letting it go. And when we come back, if everything is fine, we're very, very lucky. We should be very grateful. If everything has gone off the rails, has lost its focus, has kind of wandered into the weeds, that's because there was no one at the till. There was no one navigating the little boat. There was no one making sure the rudder was in place. We just kind of let it go because we were off busy doing something else. And when we come back, our focus is still over here. Our focus, we have to pull our focus back to be present. So we're not just simply gone and back. We lose our focus, we lose our attention, we get distracted, we go over here, we do this thing, kvetch, 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 carry, 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 and then we gradually come back. We're actually gone for a long time, and we don't realize it. And everything that was done on autopilot in our absence is a shadow of what it could be. It's a shadow of what it used to be. So the kvetchers among us who decide that I'm going to go over here and teach those people a lesson because I live in this building and you can't park there. Is that your job? Do you own the building? No, but then why don't you make sure that your parking spot is clear? Why don't you look after your stuff? Unless it's your new job to divide your time between this and that. Is it? Did they hire you? No, but perfect. Stop before the but. No, they didn't hire you. Therefore, you are abandoning you, letting you go in order to be busy doing something else. And you're not going to like the outcome. You are going to be unhappy with what you see when you return. You are going to feel badly for yourself and for the things that have fallen apart. And unfortunately, the only person to blame is the person who decided to walk away. Now, when there are other issues, when there are many, many, many demands that pull on us because we, in fact, own many things, and this is part of the whole Pivotry concept and the conversation, is that a lot of us are executives, a lot of us are decision makers, a lot of us are CEOs, entrepreneurs, parents, first responders, people who keep us safe. All the hats that these people wear include their own hat, include their own life, include their own self. And if we get involved in kvetching and carrying the responsibility of many, many things that we own, we end up with very little to show. We end up exhausted. We end up confused. We end up overwhelmed. We end up indifferent, apathetic, not well, in all ways of saying not well, because we didn't say no. We didn't say this is too much and too many all at once. We just kept saying, I'm in charge here. I took on this responsibility, and by golly, I'm going to make sure that that's going to work. Okay, but we can only do so much, and we can't multitask well. You know, they say that less is more. I'll tell you something else that's really powerful. More is very much less. The more we take on, the less we deliver. And we all know that's to be true, correct? So the kvetch and carry side of this, which one is you, is not don't care about the things associated with you. It's not that. It's not, I am an island unto myself and nothing else matters to me. It's not that. It's being careful how much of yourself you slice into millions of pieces to try and manage many things. Because each one of them is many flaming chainsaws. And we only have two hands. And there's only so many chainsaws you can juggle, especially if they're running, especially if they're on fire. So the kvetch and carry concept that I am asking is, are you looking for things to add to your pile of responsibilities? Do you have the time? I know you have the curiosity, otherwise you wouldn't be looking. I know you have the passion, otherwise you wouldn't be saying, I'm going to do that. I know that you're keen, and those are beautiful things in their purest form. The point that I'm making, the question I'm asking, is, do you have the time? Do you have the resources? Do you have a pattern of behavior set in to protect yourself against too much, too soon, too often? Are you prepared for the fallout? Because believe me, once you set something in motion, it's going to keep on going until it hits a wall and falls down. And people never, ever take that into consideration. I had a conversation with a client once who said that she wanted to start a business. She'd always wanted to make scrapbooks. And she just loved the idea that it was a wonderful and cherishing and special way to have people collect and keep their memories in a beautiful container that was something wonderful to look at and keep special. And I said, what a lovely idea. And I said, have you looked at the possibilities? Oh, yes, she said, there's even a community of scrapbook makers. There's a whole bunch of us. We all get together and we make them together. And I said, are they selling theirs? And she said, oh, yes. And I said, okay, are you sure that the market is going to cover that many people? She said, oh, of course. And she said, I have people who love what I do. How do they know what you do? Well, they already have my scrapbooks. Okay, so are they going to buy another one? Well, why wouldn't they? Because they already have one? Oh, but there's special occasion scrapbooks and there's that. And she was telling me all the wonderful things. And I didn't want to burst her bubble. I didn't want to scare her by the daunting question of how are we going to sell these things after we've invested the time and the money to make them. I didn't want to go there yet, even though it's a real concern. I said to her, and where do you plan on doing this? Do you have a little office? And she said, no. She said, I have this wonderful idea. Because a scrapbook is such a family kind of a tribal cultural thing for me, I'm gonna do a kitchen table business. And I said, oh, well, that's a beautiful idea. That really is a beautiful idea. Do you have the time and the space? And she said, oh, yes. And I said, and so tell me a little bit about your family. And the dear sweet woman proceeded to tell me all about her 5 children, all of whom are under the age of 10, and her husband, who is a loving and devoted, hardworking man who just lost his job and is looking for another one, but right now he's on unemployment. And I said, so on any given day, how many people are sitting at the kitchen table? And she said, well, I guess that would be the children and my husband and I, so 7 people. And I said, and how big is the table? And she said, well, it's a bit of a fit, because we didn't get a big trestle table, but we always make it work. And I said, okay, let's have a conversation. And I said, I want you to draw for me the table before the placemats around it, before the dishes around it. Draw for me the table. And she's very talented, very artistic. So she drew a table and it was square. And I said, okay, so is it big enough that you have so two people on each side? And she said, well, yes, it's just that big. And so I said, okay, well then let's put the table setting, but just with one plate and the cutlery and one glass and maybe something in the middle. So she drew all that out. And I said, and how many meals a day do you make? And she said, well, 3, but usually there's a snack in there somewhere. You know, if we're going to watch a football game on TV, I tend to make a snack, and I like us all to eat together. So, you know, and I said, so how many times are we doing this at the table? And she said, well, let's say on average 4. I think that covers it. And I said, okay. So the dishwasher must get a lot of use. And she said, oh yes. And I don't like doing them in the dishwasher itself. I like the kids getting involved. I think it's important to train them early. And I said, okay. And is your hubby a big help? Oh yes. He's just so involved. Okay. And I'm looking at this drawing and she's all smiling, looking at the drawing. And I said, do you have a storage container near the table? And she said, well, I have a pantry. And I said, okay. And do you have a spare room in your house, or is it quite tight? And she said, well, I don't really have a spare room. We have the basement, but, you know, playroom and laundry and whatnot. Okay. And I said, and now I'd like you to draw the table again. So we'll start again, different page. I'd like you to draw the table again. And I'd like you to show me how you lay out all your scrapbooking materials when you're working. And she said, oh, well, I have this and this and this. And she was very clever, very organized. She had little containers of different things that she used. And she had a sketchbook and she had a glue gun and, you know, stuff. And she drew it all out. And I said, this is very impressive. This is really, she's organized, smart, and really focused on what she does. And I said, okay, let's get the 2 pictures and put them side by side. And so she's sitting there all smiling. And I said, do you see a problem? And she said, no. Where's the problem? And I said, well, you cannot have the table simultaneously set for both things. And she said, what? And I said, you make 4 meals a day. You have dishes on the table 4 times a day. You have them on the table in the morning, at noon, in the late afternoon, and then later in the evening. And she said, right. And I said, where do you put the scrapbook materials while you're eating? And she said, oh, well, oh. She said, well, I just, you know, I put them away. I just put them on the bed, or I, you know, put them on the couch, or, and I said, okay, but you don't have a business running it. You're doing it as a hobby. When it's a business and you have to do it all the time because it's a business. And we're going to get to allocating the number of hours a day to do this, because it's not just the books, it's the administration of the business, using your computer to make ads and the phone to contact people and the notes that you keep on all the things that people have said to you, however you keep notes. Where is all of that going to go? You can't pack everything away 4 times a day and then bring it back, because you don't have enough hours in the day that you're awake. And she said, I could work at night when everyone's asleep. And I said, well, when do you sleep? And she said, well, I don't really need much sleep. And I said, well, you will in a minute. And it took us about a week, because we had to go back and forth about it, because she didn't want to let the idea go. She really didn't want to let the idea go. And then it dawned on her that she was trying to live in 2 worlds simultaneously. She was trying to be 2 completely different people simultaneously. And it was a very difficult and interesting transition because she was frustrated, confused, disappointed, and then determined to figure out how to solve it. And I said, the only way you solve it is by assigning ownership of some part of these two lives of yours to someone else. My husband, and I said, he's going to need a job. He wants to work. He's not your secretary. He might be right now. But while you're busy on the phone, he's going to be dealing with the children. And by the way, when he does go back to work and you're busy on the phone, who is dealing with the children? And this was not a silly, empty-headed woman. This was a very talented, very smart, very dedicated, very creative person who had a vision for a business. What she had not taken into consideration was that she is only human, and that there's only so many different ways that you can put stuff on one same space simultaneously, especially if they're not for the same purpose. She had completely ignored it. And when I presented it to her, when we had the two images, and I said, we can't overlay these. These are separate. These are completely separate and apart. How do we do this? And she was so crushed, so crushed. And we moved to, very quickly, a kvetching space. So the next phase of this, because she didn't want to let it go, and she wanted to control it, except that it wasn't hers to control. It was not hers to control. It was simply a physical fact and a time factor fact that she could not say, I will it and therefore it is. And she had to learn to let go of things that simply were not hers to own. It took us the better part of a month to get her to a place where she could understand how her business was going to possibly thrive, how she was possibly going to thrive, and how the family wouldn't feel abandoned in all its many levels and incarnations. It took us the better part of a month, because it had never occurred to her that when you stop looking this way and you look over here, even if your body is still present, your brain is not. And your brain is the one calling the shots. So in the kvetch and carry phase of this, she was all over the map. She was upset. It was difficult. There were conversations, bringing in her husband in some of the meetings, having a couple of informal meetings with the kids, because they were concerned. Mommy was fine, and then she was talking to the redheaded lady, and now mommy's not fine. And we gradually got everybody to understand that what she was trying to do was not possible the way she wanted to do it. The other side of this conversation, laugh and let go, is when you realize, when you can laugh at yourself for having a dumb idea, when you can say, oh my God, what was I thinking? As opposed to, but I want it, right? You have to get past that kvetch part to get to the laughter part and say, okay, so that was crazy. There was a moment. And then for door number 3, remember why it happened and how it happened, so we don't do it to us again, is this opportunity. If we kvetch and carry, we are dragging baggage with us. We are dragging unnecessary numbers of flaming chainsaws. Personally, I don't even think I need one, but we always somehow end up with 37 of them. If we insist on carrying, if we insist on saying, no, I can do this, no, I can do this, we're not listening. Because if we have to keep saying, no, I can do this, we are closing our eyes to the fact that part of us is saying, no, I can't. No, we can't. When we recognize the foolishness, then we can laugh. And we can say, okay, I'm not giving up on the idea. However, I am giving up on the idea of slicing myself into a million pieces. I am realizing the silliness of that idea. Conversation that I had a few months ago is a big moment, by the way, today on two levels. Very interesting. One with my colleague client and one personally. Literally 9 months from a reset decision with my client to take her business and her brand and her vision in a revised, updated, more sophisticated way. Literally 9 months. And today she is attending 3 different events that are all possible because of that decision 9 months ago. I said to her, well, look what we've rebirthed and how effortless that was. Because the labor pains began almost immediately. It's the longest labor. Midwife over here. Pilot officer on the ship. Whoa. But all of a sudden, I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this. And she said, I know. And it just looks like that. And I said, doesn't it? How awesome is that? And on the personal side, yesterday, the house sale came through. The sign is up on the lawn. And 3 hours of finding papers and scanning and sending copies and preparing the document file that I need to bring next week for the handoff. This is now yours. This is now mine. Thank you. Have a good life. In both instances, there was this incredible tsunami euphoria in the realization that it's here. It has arrived. And in the aftermath of that rush of, we did it, there is the equal and opposite reaction of emotion. The realization that every ounce of energy and effort and focus and commitment leaning in did its job is no longer required. And now we rest. And I fell down. I shut down early. I had a nice little dinner, had a nice little glass of wine, cheers, and I went to bed early. And I slept pretty much straight through. I felt like the person who has run a marathon, not a sprint, a marathon. And not pushing up to cross the finish line, but discovering that the finish line was closer than I had realized. That I had crossed a line and somebody said, you won. And I was still in slog mode. And I found myself saying, what? And then, as my analogy, when you're hiking out in a sailboat and the wind stops, if you're pulling out hard enough for long enough and the wind suddenly stops, you do fall down. You do fall out of the boat. You do land. And you have to get back up and get back in the boat. And so that's what shutting down early was. That was not a case of Kvetch and Carrie. It was a case of Carrie. And I did my best. I do my best, as you know, in watching these videos and seeing the other work I do. I do my best to find the humor, to find the laughter, to find the frailties, and find the joy in the imperfections. It's still a commitment. It's still a decision to stay on top of things, to stay involved, to make it work. And we never realize how exhausting that is until all of a sudden our body says, that's enough. I was talking with my good friend Mike the other day, who suddenly got sick and he felt terrible. And then it was his birthday, almost right after he got well. And I said, what a brilliant birthday present. And he said, the gift that keeps on giving is that I'm well and I can enjoy my birthday. So in this conversation, do you kvetch and carry? Or do you laugh and let it go? And do you make a note? So whatever happened, the next time it happens, you're in control. These things that are happening to me, these episodes. I was talking to Carol and she said, this thing about new material. And I said, I know, right? I'm not writing a sitcom. I'm not, whoever you are, I'm not writing a sitcom. And then I said, I've been thinking about that thing. We talk about it, new material. And I don't even have to leave the house. It just comes to me. I was thinking that maybe that there are some comedy writers who've passed on and they're looking for somebody on the ground to actually pick up the pen on their behalf. Okay. I'm good. I got lots of material. And she said, it's silly. However, I don't think you're wrong. And I said, I know, right? There's this whole sense that a lot of stuff is taking place that I don't really have conscious control of. What I do have control of is recognizing a message and thinking about it long enough to understand that it is something worth sharing. Because when I see the message and I recognize the value, then if I share the message and the value with you, it becomes a life lesson that you just get to study and practice on and become aware of and do the homework for without having to actually slog through the slogging parts that I do. You get to learn from my experiences if you're ready to. Asking yourself the question, do I kvetch? Do I just complain for the sake of complaining, to hear my voice? Do I kvetch because it's a great stalling tactic? As long as I'm focused on this, I don't have time to do that? Am I abandoning me? Why am I abandoning me? The most important person in my life is the container I'm in. That this is the one that keeps me going. All this other stuff is stuff. Do I kvetch and carry? We can, when we start working together, if you want my help, when you want my help, we can decide why you do that. We already see how you do it. More importantly, we can begin now giving you the opportunity to rate the value you are creating for you. So you know how I do this thing on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your day? And I do it as a way to anchor in solid, tangible terms how well you are riding the waves. It's not on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you achieving? That's not what I'm talking about. It's on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you managing the storms? How safe are you feeling? How rested are you? How ready are you? How grateful are you? That's what the scale of 1 to 10 is. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, When you recognize that you're kvetching and carrying, when you see it, pause. And another thing, I represent the pause. What is that doing for you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how is that helping you manage you? How is that with our scrapbook lady? How much time and attention and creative excitement you're putting into your scrapbooks? What is that doing for you as a mom? What is that doing for you as a wife? What is that doing for you as just you getting rested and feeling good about all the things in your life that mean so much? How are you juggling? On a scale of 1 to 10, have you put too much on your plates? You already have 8 around the table. How many plates? How are you juggling them? On a scale of 1 to 10, what is the juggling doing for you? Is it increasing value in your family dynamic, in your love life, in your happiness scale? Do you have time to sit down and have really intensive and exciting and creative conversations with your fellow scrapbookers? Are you able to completely separate everything out of your brain and just sit and listen and enjoy the happiness of the client whose scrapbook you made? Or are you completely untethered? Are you completely shattered and chasing the bits of you like leaves in the wind? On a scale of 1 to 10, it's not how many you can juggle. It's not how much you can put on the table. It's how much those things return to you. Are you kvetching and carrying the burden? Are you laughing and let the burden go? Are you finding a place in the middle to learn from the wins and the losses? It's a very interesting question. And embedded in all of that is you need a code word. You need a pattern interrupt. You need to remind yourself somehow that you have entered into that, at the doctor's office, the little rubber hammer time moment when you say, I'm not going to make my need, and it does it anyway because it's not listening to you. Doesn't care what you want. We need a pattern interrupt. And whatever the pattern interrupt is that you've begun to use from when we talked about it before, whatever the word is that makes you smile, that makes you laugh and let go, that's the whole point of a pattern interrupt. You can use the same word. It's not like those passwords where you have to have so many letters and they all have to be different. And then you have to have numbers and you have special symbols. It's not that. It's a code word that reminds you that you're human. And it makes you go, oh yeah, boof. Whatever the word is, whether it's boof, whether it's pickle, I don't care. But whatever the word is that makes you smile, you need that code word to remind you that not only is it impossible to be all things to all people all the time, not only is it not possible to do that, it's not fun. It's exhausting. All of these elements today, all of this that I'm talking about today, these are the components of an entire category in Pivotry in Motion that I call executive grief. Executive grief, when you think of they talk about in the ocean a rogue wave. And I'm not talking about seventh wave and 6 and then 7 is a bigger wave. No, a rogue wave is what comes, it feels like it comes out of nowhere, but it is actually the product of too many intersecting energies happening, finally coming together at one time. And the reason I refer to it as the underlying definition of executive grief is that when you are the scrapbook lady and the wife and the mom and the manager of the small business and the marketing person for the small business and the customer service representative to all the clients of the small business, And so you are making decisions for everybody. And let's not forget our other family, our mom and our dad and our cousins and our aunts and our uncles. And let's not forget the neighbors. Now you are making so many decisions that affect so many people. That is the makings of a rogue wave. And the difference between something that happens on the ocean that we cannot control and often don't see until it's too late, and what we can do as a protective, preventative measure as thinking people who've decided to be a CEO, a chief decision maker, a chief fixer of all things for all our loved ones, is to remember that code word, to remind ourselves that we cannot be all things all the time, all at once, that we have to pick our battles, that we have to take some things off the table in order to do the remaining things well. It's a fascinating conversation. So the homework today, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humans of all shapes and sizes, the homework today is for you to find your code word. Think about something that just makes you giggle. Talk to people who you love. Come up with that word. Write it down somewhere. Put it on a Post-it note. Stick it on the thing of your computer. Stick it on the mirror in the bathroom. Write it down on many Post-it notes. Stick it on the inside of the door of the house when you're going to leave. Remind yourself that that's your safe word. That is your pattern interrupt that brings you back to you and stops you from spinning off and becoming a rogue wave. That is our goal today. Get ourselves grounded, get ourselves in a place where the things we can do, that we do well, we have the energy to enjoy and celebrate because we own it and we are passionate about it. And we do not deserve to carry unnecessary baggage. How's that for a leading into the weekend set of ideas to set you going? I hope it's as exciting for you as it was for me when I was putting it all together to talk about it today. I hope it really, really was fun for you. And I hope it really gets you thinking, because you deserve, we all deserve to give ourselves permission to say, okay, that's what I did last night. I said, okay, early night. I did a good job. I get the night off. And I woke up refreshed and feeling so proud of everyone involved in this process with me. We complete it next week with the actual physical handing off of things. And so in between now and then, I get to focus and decide how to take advantage of this shift in the things I was having to do and now the things I get to do. It's like the reward at the end of the race. Very, very, very exciting. So between now and Tuesday, all of that is happening in my little corner of the world. I know that equally big and equally important things are happening in your corner of the world. And that is why I wanted to share this with you. What I talked about on Tuesday about passwords and what I'm talking about today is to remind you that we have permission to laugh and let it go and say, well, that's ridiculous. As opposed to, what is the wrong? No, it's ridiculous. Let it go. We have permission to do that. If I can do it, if I give myself permission to do it, you are entitled to do it too. That's the way this works. Okay. So between now and next week, you know the drill. Be good to you. You deserve it. Remember to hug your loved ones because they deserve it too. Thank you so much for watching. To all the newcomers, I hope I see you again next week. And I hope you tell your friends because our tribe is growing and thriving and prospering. And I would like you and your friends in on it with us. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for watching.